I think I'm so excited is because you came to a special Sunday. It's a very, very special Sunday. I have the privilege to introduce to you today a new speaker. And thank you, Brian. And I have the privilege to know her for many years, and I consider myself a friend of her. Her and her family kind of serve at Experience Church a lot. She wears many hats here at Experience Church. And one of the reasons probably why, Jen, I got a little nervous is because I wanted this to be perfect. So perfect. But I'm so thankful for calling her a friend more than a co-worker or just somebody that I do ministry with. And I love that she gets the vision of who we are and where we're going as a church. So would you give a warm welcome to Diana Duke? So some of you know her, some of you don't know her. So what I wanted to do is ask her a few questions, a few fun questions, so we can all get to know her a little bit better. All right? Dee?
Yes.
By the way, she doesn't know this is coming.
No. This is totally random. Yeah. Yep, this was the scariest part of my whole afternoon.
All right, well, that's a lot of questions already. What's your favorite book series?
Oh gosh, you said these were going to be like, pick one or other.
Right away.
Book series, Chronicles of Narnia.
All right. So would you rather be inside the Chronicles of Narnia world or Hunger Games?
Narnia.
Okay, really? You're sticking to it?
I'm sticking to that one, yeah.
How about, since we're talking about Hunger Games, what's your favorite food?
Oh, pizza.
Ooh, nice. Your kids might love you.
Yeah.
My kids, that's all they eat.
Oh, well, it's pretty kid-friendly, so maybe that's why it became my favorite food.
How about TV shows, Office or Park and Rec?
Oh, Parks and Rec.
Yes! Yes. How long have you been married?
19 years.
That took you a while.
So you knew that question was coming. Lakers or Celtics?
Lakers!
Yes!
God.
This is why you're here. If you could meet anyone living or dead, who would you meet? And you cannot say Jesus.
Oh yeah, that's gosh, I don't know. That's a big question. Yeah, I don't
Pass.
know. I guess I'd pass.
All right, we'll come back to that.
I can think about that. There's got to be somebody really interesting that I'm forgetting.
What do you love the most about the journey that God has you in right now?
You know what struck me in one of the songs this morning was that line, "You're never going to let me down." And we think of that a lot as, God will never let us down. But I also think, if you knew the Jesus that I know, you're never going to let him down. He never looks at what you do and is like, oh, well, I wouldn't make that choice. Like maybe you've done things that he wouldn't want for you, but you don't let him down. And that's the thing about this journey, is that there's no downside to it, right? You can do anything that he wants you to do, and if it's an epic fail, like
mess up in the opening?
mess up the opening, yeah, I'm giving you permission to let that go, see?
Totally. Well, I'm so excited for what God has in store for you and for today's message.
All right, cool. Phew. Okay, I feel like I just survived something really serious. So it's funny that he talked about fear a little bit this morning, because I was going to start with one other thing about me that I think is important for you to know, and that is that this world terrifies me. I think that's a very personal thing for me. I have two kids. They are 11 and 13 now. My babies are in middle school. And for those of you who don't have kids, or kids have, thank goodness, not been there yet, middle school opens up this whole brand new world for your kids. And I didn't have an awareness of it until I felt like my kids were suddenly exposed to it. So my son comes home just this week. He gets in the car. He's like, "Mom, you won't believe what happened. In second period, some kids outside thought it would be really funny if they threw down a bunch of pop rocks. We thought it was a silencer, maybe a gun in another classroom." It's like, wow, that's probably a fair thing to imagine in this day and age, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry that is the world that you live in and that you have to face. A few more fun statistics, because everybody likes to start out with statistics. 1 in 5 kids are bullied on school property. That's just school property. If we were to jump to cyberbullying, that goes to half. Half of kids are cyberbullied. 10% have experienced sexual violence by the time they hit 18. That's 1 in 10 kids. 44% have used an eBay product. That didn't even exist when I was a kid. 20% have had alcohol by the time they're in 8th grade. That jumps to like 60% by the time they're 18. 32% felt sad and hopeless. And 17% have seriously considered suicide by the time they're 18. That is the world that these kids live in. And so I look at that, and I listen to my kids, and I watch the news, and that fear starts to build in me. It builds up until it gets to a point that it's almost paralyzing. I don't even know how to tackle that. I don't know what to do. These are my precious little babies. And yet, as much as I would like to crawl into bed and pull the covers up over my head and pretend that this doesn't exist, right? We're all here. We realize what functional adults, unfortunately, have to do every day, which is get up and make meals and take people places and put food on the table and do work. So what do you do when you're faced with this fear that has built up in you and yet this necessity to somehow continue to function in the face of that fear? And I happened to be reading this week and came across this quote, and I absolutely loved it. It comes from Cus D'Amato. I assume, like me, most of you would not. Does anybody know who that is? Oh my gosh, you totally could have gotten a bonus prize. Cus D'Amato was the trainer for Floyd Patterson and Mike Tyson during the good years. He trains prize fighters, right? And I think, like, that must be sort of a terrifying job. You asked me if I'd like to go into Hunger Games, and just no. So he said this about fear. You must understand fear so you can manipulate it. Fear is like fire. You can make it work for you. It can warm you in the winter, cook your food when you're hungry, give you light when you are in the dark, and produce energy. Fear is the friend of exceptional people. I thought that's a really interesting way to look at fear, that we have this fear that builds up in us. But what if we can use that fear as fuel to build something better? And I think that that's why a lot of us actually end up in church. Because regardless of what we feel about Jesus or God, what our experiences have been, you get to this point in life and you think, wow, this world is terribly frightening, and I would like some help. And it would be logical to think, the church might be able to help me. They have attracted, fed, and comforted millions of people for a couple thousand years. Sure, I might want to check that out and see if they can help me make sense of something that seems to me like a problem I'm never going to be able to solve. So they end up here, and I'm going to give you another quote, which comes from what I like to refer to as a Christian book of quote. It's Psalms. It's right in the center of your Bible if you were to open one. And it says this: I sought the Lord, and he answered me. He delivered me from all my fears. And I think regardless of how you feel, or what might be the price, if you look at that and you think, this is an organization that is offering to deliver me from all my fears, that might be worth investing in. I think maybe I'll try this for my family. So what happens then is, as a church, we need to realize that families are coming to us to seek help for a problem. And they are looking for us to partner with them. And so the question becomes then for a church, what do we offer parents who seek our church as a solution to what feels like an unsolvable problem? I mean, they're here. They've come to us for help. What do we do for them? So I'd like to look at a story today from the Bible about that sort of same thing, about what happens when this world is closing in on you and you need protection. What do you do? It's in the book of Nehemiah, which, if you're not a believer, is excellent. It's a historically accurate story of Nehemiah, who was the cupbearer to King Artaxerxes in the Persian Empire. And you can look at this and glean from it some useful facts or ideas on what you might do in this situation. But if you are a believer, I'm going to push it a little bit farther and say that this story was placed in the Bible for a reason, and that it gives us a roadmap on how we can tackle an unsolvable problem. So, if you have your app, it's on YouVersion, you can go under events, and Experience Church has an event site that gets up every week. The slides are in there, or you can just follow along on the screen. All of the significant verses will be up there. So, Nehemiah, like I said, is the cupbearer to the king, which is kind of like a glorified butler. I don't know, in my head he looks a little bit like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I can't explain that. I think it's sort of because he's like kind of cool and he's hip and he's got like all these words of wisdom, but he's not actually in charge. He does have access to the king though, and he's got money. This provides him with money. It really doesn't give him much else. It is just a, kind of this, it's a good job in, the Persian Empire as things go. So he's there in Susa, which is about 1,000 miles away from Jerusalem, where his ancestors are from, and his brother comes and visits him. And his brother comes in and he goes, "Hey brother, how's it going in Jerusalem?" And the brother goes, "It is bad." He's like, "Oh, really?" And he says, "Yes. The wall around the city has been broken down, and the gates have been burned with fire." And I imagine that Nehemiah hears this, and he's picturing this place that is significant for him, and now completely vulnerable to enemies and outsiders coming in. And maybe that's that gate that you picture walking through, and now it's burned, and he weeps. Have you ever wept over the state of this world? I know I have. I can think of a really good example, because it came up this week, the shooting outside of the Mandalay Bay. Significant to me, because I've actually stayed in the Mandalay Bay. I stayed there with my kids, who saw that on the news, and asked me, why would that happen? Why would somebody do that? Those people were just at a concert. We go to concerts, Mom. You go to concerts. And it absolutely brought me to tears that those people were just trying to have fun. And that it was just such a random, stupid thing that this world seems to be really good at producing. So Nehemiah weeps, and he doesn't just weep, but he mourns, and he fasts, which is when you sort of abstain from food in order to dedicate yourself to prayer, and he prays. The whole last half of the first chapter of Nehemiah is this beautiful, long, effusive prayer. And he says, I'm sorry for anything our people have done, and I know that this is just terrible, and we need to do something, and God, will you please help me do something? And it's this beautiful, beautiful prayer, and he gets to the very end, and he finishes his prayer, and then there's this single line. I was cupbearer to the king. Now, as a writer, I stop at lines like that. Because when I contrast something really long and effusive and beautiful with something very simple, like a 6-word sentence, it's usually a punchline. I usually use it to do something. And I think what he's saying there is he had been broken over this, and he realizes that something's got to get done, and he says, why don't I go and do it? You need to help me, God. And then he's like, but I'm cupbearer to the king. That is all I have to offer. I'm not even a mason worker. I'm just cupbearer to the king. And yet, he realizes that somebody has got to do something. And he's aware of that. So, for him, even if he's not qualified, the need trumps the qualification. It's like, forget it. I can't not be aware of this anymore. You can't turn off the news every time it comes on, or ignore your kids' questions. I've tried. They just keep asking over and over again. Awareness is the first step. The solution begins with awareness. So he's aware. He's like, all right, I got to do something. So he goes into the king. That's all he's got. I'm cupbearer of the king. He goes in, and he's so upset that the king actually says, what's wrong? He says, well, Jerusalem is in trouble, and he says this, if it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in his sight, let him send me to the city in Judah where my ancestors are buried, so that I can rebuild it. And I totally wonder what the look on the king's face was when he said this. You're my butler. You would like me to send you off 1,000 miles away for a couple months so that you can just rebuild the walls around a city? Yes, that is exactly what Nehemiah does. He knows that regardless of what he's capable of, that something needs to be done. That when you have an awareness that there's a problem, or you're aware that parents are coming to our church for help, that awareness is then followed by willingness. A willingness to say, all right, I may not have everything figured out, but I'm willing to give it a shot. Willing to have hard conversations with your kids. Willing to step out of your comfort zone. Willing to do something. So he takes his awareness and he takes his willingness, and he does travel all the way to Jerusalem, and he walks all the way around the city, and it's exactly how his brother said. And so he gathers all of the people together from the city. And he says this, Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been burned with fire. Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace. I really just love his straightforward nature on all these things. Let's just do this. Nehemiah knows that he can't build the protection alone. He knows. He's not dumb. And he also realizes that the people he gathers aren't equipped either. I mean, I'm sure you've got a mason or a carpenter in there, right? But you've got a bunch of butcher, baker, candlestick maker, none of whom could build this on their own. Just like no parent is going to be able to build everything that their kids need to get them from 0 to 18 or 25 or 60 on their own. However, willingness is followed by togetherness. There's power in that togetherness that just simply doesn't exist when everybody is working on their own. So I want to give you an illustration of what this looks like. When you become a Christian, we use this term. We say that you become part of the family of God. And it comes from the Bible. It's a really useful way to illustrate the relationship that you then have with God. He is not like some sort of overlord boss or some dictator, but he becomes like your father. You are adopted into his family as a child. And then you have a relationship, a kind of discipleship relationship between a child and a father. So we say that you're part of the family of God. But in a church, what that creates when all of those people come together is it actually creates a family of families. Because each one of those little families is part of one big family. And that includes even people that are totally single. I'm not referring to like people with children. I'm just saying that each unit that comes here becomes part of a family of families. What I think is really great about that illustration is that when we invite people who aren't sure about Jesus into an organization, into this community, they get to experience the life, love, and community that you get from being part of a family of God. And that experience is transformative. It's transformative for them, and it's transformative for the people that learn to engage with them and show them love, regardless of what they share in terms of faith. So what you have is a family of families. That is the togetherness that we already have here in this church. What I think it's interesting to point out when Nehemiah is talking, though, is he says, "Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace." He kind of issues this little sideline to them, which is that if you're aware of the problem, which they're living in the city, I don't think it was news to them that the walls had broken down, the gates on fire, and you're willing to acknowledge the problem and talk about it, which it was when they came together, and you're now together. If you have willingness and awareness and togetherness and do nothing, you're in disgrace. In other words, you're not part of the solution. You kind of end up being part of the problem. So, this is what the people say. Let us start rebuilding. Sure, why not? Let's give this a try. He seems really sure of himself for a cupbearer. They're not equipped either, right? He has not changed anything fundamental about their qualifications just by making these statements. But he's made a pitch and he says, let's do this. And they go, all right. I don't know about, the other parents in the room. I read all of the books before I had children. I went to all of the classes. We made our nursery really nice. We did all of our baby registry. And yet, when they wheeled my son into our room, and they brought us in there, and then they all left, we looked at each other like there had been a serious mistake. I mean, I kid you not. The first child, the first baby either ever held was our son. We were not equipped to do this, regardless of what we had read. And yet, they seemed to just think we were going to just take care of him and take him home, so we did. And you know what? He's still here. On Toba. But it was in the doing that we learned so much more. That experience is everything. You can take all of the equipment and all the learning in the world, but until you do it, it's not the same thing. And so that's what they said. They're like, all right, let's do this. Let's figure out how to build a wall. If we're going to offer these families some kind of protection that come and seek it from us, then we need to start building. Togetherness is followed by action. So what does that look like? There are a lot of things that we can offer parents who come here as a church, and we do. We have, great curriculum. We use this curriculum Orange that really does work very hard to partner with families, and it's got all the supplementary material we send home. We can have parenting classes and conferences and invested small group leaders. There are a ton of things that we can offer parents, but there is only one thing that we can only build together. It's a safety net. Here's how you do it. It's a 5-to-1 ratio. Now, if you've ever been in family ministry, this is actually a really common ratio that you use. It's like the ideal number for a leader to a child ratio. But that's not what they mean. What they actually mean is 5 adults to every 1 kid. I did not make this number up. This comes from Fuller Youth Institute, who does a considerable amount of research on kids and teens and what gets them through. And they came up with this number, that if you have 5 adults in a kid's life, it profoundly impacts where they end up. 5 caring, praying, invested adults. 5 adults who are talking to them in a voice that is different than their parents. Your kids don't count. That have had different life experiences, that tackle problems differently, that can offer them things that their parents simply could never know or offer. 5 adults who have their number in that kid's phone, so that when they become that 17% that is seriously considering committing suicide, that they are there for them. That they catch what a parent, the most well-meaning parent in the world, cannot. Having 5 invested adults in a kid's life creates a safety net. You want to see? This is my favorite part. Okay, so you start with a family of families, right? And then you start investing, adults start investing in kids, not their own kids. So it starts with, let's say, Jeanette Sundin decides to invest in Jake Matthews. And then Jen Matthews decides to invest in Jonas. And then Julieta decides to invest in Micah. And so on and so forth. They start investing until it starts to look like this. You see it now? That is actually just 1 connection per kid. Let's jump again. That is actually only like 2 to 3. I got tired of copying and pasting lines. There's probably an easier way to do that, and I'm not tech savvy. But what I love about this is look at what that builds, all by a person, an adult, saying, I'm going to start investing in some kids here. It, to me, is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen, because not only does it create this safety net that gives parents that breath of relief that I'm not doing this alone, it catches children. It makes sure they don't fall through the cracks in a busy, busy, scary world. And it draws us together in a way that just ties up the family of families. I find that so amazing. So the question then becomes, who are yours? So if we're all here, we're aware, and we're willing, and we're together, and we want to take action, who are yours? My husband is a statistician, so we had to get this accurate. It does not even turn out to be 5 kids for each adult. That's your good news for the day. It's really, in a church the size of ours, like 2 to 3 kids per adult. That's it. 2 to 3 kids that would have somebody that is just saying hi to them, praying for them, asking them how their week went, knowing what they're struggling with. 2 or 3 kids parents that could pick them up at a party when they don't want to call mom or dad. So who are yours? Can you name them? Would they name you? I will tell you why I think this is so important. And this is a question that I would like you to go home and think about. Regardless of what stage you are in life, who are you investing in? Because I gave you a lot of statistics at the beginning about the world that our kids face. I will give you another one. 50% of kids in a church will walk away. Regardless of how invested they are, when they hit 18, 50% of them will leave the church and never come back. So, you gotta ask, what changes that? And if you look at the research, Fuller Youth Institute decided that that number was very frightening and that they were going to find out what could make a difference. And there are a lot of factors that play into it, but the one thing that they found was that the single most powerful factor to stopping that exodus from happening is intergenerational relationships in worship. Not how many verses they know, or how often they went to church, or how involved they were in youth group. It was, they found, intergenerational relationships and worship, being together in a church body and families that made the difference. That was the thing that made the difference. So we think, sometimes we say the kids are the future of this church, of the global church. They are our future. But if 50% of them are going to walk away, then this may be our only chance to engage them. That makes them the church's now, not the church's future. And I know what some of you are probably thinking, which is what I thought when, I don't know, anytime I deal with my kids. I'm not equipped for this. And I understand that feeling. I know that. I know that you go, all right, I am aware of the problem, and I'm willing to do something about it, and I'm with you on this, but I don't know how to talk to kids. The truth is, I don't know most of the time either. When my kid comes home and tells me that they thought there was a gun in their school, when they see the news on the Mandalay Bay, and they go, Mom, this is a true story, we're going to be outside of a Vegas hotel in 6 months in a tent in a parking lot. Are we going to be safe? What are we going to do? Can that happen then? I don't know. I don't know how to answer all of those questions, but I do know as a parent that I would love to be part of a church that made sure that I didn't have to do it alone. A church that uses that fear as fire to build something that protects families and catches kids. And the truth is, everybody that Nehemiah needed to rebuild that wall, as ill-equipped as they were, was already in the city. 52 days later, they had a wall. Everyone that we would need to build that safety net is already here in this building. The question is whether they're going to pony up and do it, right? Whether we're going to say, we want to offer these parents something other than a handout when they leave our church. I'll leave you with one last quote. This is from Joshua. I love Joshua. He's one of the heroes of the Old Testament. He goes into battle in just this amazing way. And when he does, he says this, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." He does not want you to do this alone, right? But he doesn't want to just do everything for us. He wants parents to win. Because when parents win, kids win, and when kids win, the world wins. But he wants to do it through us. He wants to partner with us to let us be part of something incredible. If you're interested in having a conversation about that, I don't know what that looks like for you, but I know that the first step is to say, yeah, what could I do? What would be possible within my skill set and my qualifications? What could I do to make a difference? And I'll be back by the response station, right? If you are a total introvert like I am, believe it or not, we have these cool little cards there. You can very quietly, in the comfort of your own lap, mark it down and turn it in at that same response box. But I'd like to encourage you to think about that. Who are you investing in? And what difference could that investment make to the future of this world? Let's pray. Dear God, thank you so much for just this incredible journey that you have us on, that there is nothing more than you want from us than a willingness and an awareness and a togetherness that you provide us with all the tools and resources that we need. Thank you for trusting us with these families, Lord. Thank you for the families that have brought their kids here, Lord. Let us honor them as you would have them honored. Let us love them with your love, Lord. Let us see a generation that grows up and stays in this church. Let that be our legacy. Let it be a legacy of a generation that pursues more and more people with your love, Lord. Let us see a world in 50 years that looks different than the world we see outside. Thank you for this time, Lord. Thank you for the people that are sharing it with us. Thank you for your love and for the community that has brought us together. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.